Hello everyone. Today I want to do a video covering an exercise that I feel is very important as it covers the basic concepts of programming, including commands, loops, and conditionals. So here we have a program, and this program is called a hollow rectangle printer, or prints a hollow rectangle. The method I have is print hollow rectangle. So what is this simple, well, it's simple in that it's not a huge program in the essence of a lot of code, but it's also simple in the bigger arena of programming, yet it's for someone just starting out or at the intermediate level. When I remember first seeing this exercise, it wasn't necessarily the easiest to grasp at first. But like I said, it is important because it covers commands, loops, and conditionals. And all three of those are kind of like the basic three concepts that I feel and a lot of other programmers feel are kind of like the foundation of programming. So what this program does is, as you see here, it asks how many rows of stars do you want? So how many rows? Let's say we've put 4. And how many columns of stars do you want? And we're going to put 8. And then it will print out 4 rows and 8 columns, and then in the center it'll be hollow, so it's a hollow rectangle consisting of 4 rows and 8 columns. Okay, so it seems pretty basic. So why is this important? Like I explained, that it covers the basic concepts, foundational concepts of commands, loops, and conditionals. And the way we could cover this right now, the way we're going to cover it is both visually and with the code. This is in C#, and I have a visual aid right here. We can look at how the code works. So as you see, the user inputs, in this case, the user will input the number of rows. That would be parsed down from a string into an integer and then stored into row. And the same thing with columns, stored into column. And they're passed down as parameters, or as arguments, sorry, into these parameters right here. And then we get into where the program will execute for us when we invoke, right? When we call the method, and in the case of JavaScript, call the function. Okay, so here we go. So for the first, in the for loop, what it does is it says, okay, we want this outer loop to run the number of rows that we have, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's what we have. So we have 4 rows with 0 indexed. So it runs 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and we want the columns to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Excuse me. Okay, so we have 7 columns. All right. And well, we have 8 columns actually, but 0 through 7. So 0 indexed. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, so every time you have a new row, you're going to print a star. As you can see here, every time you have a new row, you will print 1 star. So every time we have a new row, a star will be printed no matter what. Okay, so the rows are going to go this way. Now, this is where we get into the nested for loop. And in the nested for loop, we're only going to print a star if I equals 0. So in other words, we're at the first row, or I equals rows minus 1. In other words, we're at the last row. Then we'll print a star. So in this case over here, we're definitely in the first row. So we've got this initial outer loop that'll print, every single time it'll write, it'll console.write, and it'll print a star. And then almost like you can think of like a relay race, like a baton being passed. Then we go to j equals 1, which is right there. This is j equals 1 right here. And then at j equals 1, it'll either print a space, right, or an empty string, actually, or it'll print a star. And since we're at I equals 0, it's going to print stars all the way across until it gets to, as you see over here, columns -1, which essentially means the second to last column. Every time it gets to the last column, it's not only going to print a star, so it prints a star, but it's also going to the next line, and then when it gets to the next line, it's going to always print another star. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have another right here, console.write. And it's going to, right there, it's going to print another one. However, now we're going to the nested for loop, and we've got I does not equal 0, it equals 1. So we're going to go here and just print a space. Okay, so we're going to print a space all the way across. And the same thing is going to be true with row 3. So 0, 1, 2. Actually, so 0, 1, 2, or row 3. Hope that's not confusing. Basically, we're 0 indexed, right? Which is why we have rows -1, because we have 4 rows, but it's 0, 1, 2, 3. So it goes in as rows -1. In other words, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. Speaking of 3, well, backing up a bit, every time we print a row, no matter what, we do that console.write line. And that goes to the next line. We do the console.write line right here, or right here, right? Then it goes to the next line, and in this case, the condition is true. This condition is true. I equals rows -1. So we're going to put all these stars in here. First, we're going to put the first star, right? Boink. Then we're going to put all the rest of the stars in there. So first one, then it gets j equals, I guess in this case. So we've got j equals 1, 2, 3. Suppose that's how that works, because you've got it starting right at 1, right? And it's going to go all the way across. Actually, that's not how it works. It goes 1 to 6. So every time it comes into here, it does equal 1. I hope that didn't confuse you. Don't worry about it. It's just j equals 1. And then it's going to either print a space here all the way across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then it's going to go to 7, which is column -1. I think that's how that, again, works, right? Okay. All right, so it prints spaces if this condition isn't met, or it prints these stars. So let's put the stars all the way across. I 6, 7, and then every single time it's going to print this console.write line, except in this case, right, we've come to the end of the outer loop, okay, because we have the number of rows. In other words, we have I less than rows, so we've got our 4 rows, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so when it gets to that last row, this condition is met. I equals rows -1. So it comes in here. It always prints out the first star of the row. Boink! And then since we're at I equals rows -1, and in other words, the last row, it's going to print out those 6 stars. Right? So we got 7, and then boink! Right at the end there, console.write line. So I hope that makes sense. Just remember this is very important. When you come into this nested for loop, it's like a baton is being passed. Okay, and then this for loop is gonna execute all the way through from 1 to columns -1, right? So from 1 to 7 or to 6, right? Because we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This just happens to start at 1. So it goes across. It either prints stars or it prints blanks. Whatever. Some sound effect that works there. maybe. So that's where the blanks are. So, and then the stars are. Okay, so using those same sound effects. Boink, boink, and the boink is there, and the is there, and the boink is there, and the boink is there, and the so 6 boink. Okay, sorry about that. Just hope that hope that helps. Okay, so hopefully you've internalized. Try to internalize that, visualize it, see how it works in your mind. It's one of the biggest hurdles I had, I guess, is kind of like the visualization of the baton being passed to the inner for loop, and then the inner for loop just executes this way, or whatever, and then the boinks are right here, console.write, boink, and then the console.write line is right here, boink, and it goes next row, and it goes boink, and all the way across. Okay, now that I've hopefully helped you more than annoyed you, I want to do this in JavaScript, so you can see how it works in JavaScript, and I won't reference anything. I'll just write it out. Let's see here. So basically, we're going to do the same thing in JavaScript. It's a little different. I won't get in user input from the user interface or anything like that. I'll just let rows to 4, let columns equal 8. Like console log by nature is kind of like a console.write line in C#, but there is something that'll print across. It's process.stdout.write. You'll see. So let's start function. Okay, so we got our function, print, triangle, and then as parameters, we'll take in a row and a column. All right, and then we'll do our first loop. This is the outer loop. So 4, see if I can situate myself a little bit better with the keyboard here. So 4, we'll do 0 less than row. So we have the rows, and then okay. So what this is saying basically is we start our loop at 0, obviously. We've got our command, that's print hollow triangle, right? Print hollow rectangle. And we got our for let I equals 0, I is less than row. So it means that those are all the rows that we're going to have going down. So 0, 1, 2, and 3, since it's 0 indexed, and then I plus plus. Okay. All right. So here's the first thing it does. Every time it starts a new row, what does it do? It does process.stdout.write. Okay, and it's going to print a star or an asterisk in this case. Okay, so it does that every time. And then it passes the baton to the inner loop. I guess we could write it. Well, that's fine. J be assigned to 0, right? J is less than, what we want to do is less than column minus 1, right? So actually J it starts at 1 because the baton is being passed, right? So like I said, this is basically I equals 0 when we start off, right? And then this is J equals 1. So that starts right there. Okay. J plus plus. Okay, now we're going to get into the conditionals, or the conditional in this case. Okay, so if I equals 0, in other words, if we're in the first row, or I equals row minus 1, in other words, the last row. Okay. So if we either have I equals 0 or I equals row minus 1, what do we want to do? Well, let's say we want to do a process std out.write, and we want to print star, right? So now that we're in the first row, we definitely want to print the stars across, okay? As long as we're not in the first column, but the second column, right, to the second to last column. Prints. Okay. However, if I does not equal 0 or I does not equal row minus 1, in other words, we're not in the first row or the last row, okay? You could do it like this. You could just write an else statement. You could write I is something to the effect of I is greater than 0 and less than row minus 1, right? But you could also just use the edge case else. I'll leave notes about that in the description. I think I said that correctly, but I'll clarify if I did not. Okay, so if that's not the case, you want to do process.stdout.write, and then just print, basically print an empty string, right? So in other words, just print an empty string in all these slots, okay? And that's going to be true when you're at, this is I equals 0, this is I equals 1, I equals 2. Now you're at I equals 3, which is the same thing as rows minus 1, right? 4 minus 1 is 3. And now, just like in every case, you're going to go boink, print that out. But now that this conditional is met, right, in the last row, you're going to print stars in that last row. Every column is going to get a star. And then that's the end of the loop, okay? Now, once you come out of that nested loop, right, you want to remember that every single time we want to do a console, not, until we get to the end of the loop, we want to do a console.log, and we want to do a star. Okay, so let's take a look at this really quickly because it's easy to kind of get mixed up as you're talking about it and writing and referencing things. So let's look. We've got down here is where we're going to invoke or call the function. We've got our rows and columns. Okay, rows, columns. They're being passed as arguments. These are parameters right here. Okay, these parameters are taking on those values here, 4 and 8. And we're doing for let I equals 0, I is less than row. In other words, the number of rows, I plus plus. As long as that's true, we're going to do a process.stout, and we're going to write a star. And we're not going to zoom in. So we're going to write a star. Okay? We do that the first time. We do that the second. We do that every single time there's a new row. Okay? But when do we print out stars all the way across? Okay? Across. Not across. So when do we do that? Well, we do that only when I equals 0, in other words, the first row, or I equals row minus 1, in other words, the last row. And in the first case, we do that, but in our case, at 0, we do that. At 1 and 2, we do not. At 3, we do that. We print all those out. And then the other cases where this condition is not met, we just print out an empty string. And then every time, just like every time in the beginning of each row, we print a star, we also, at the end of each row, so the first column, the last column, always get a star. Okay, so see if this works. Oh, something is wrong. So let me see what I've done wrong. Good Lord, what have I done? Oh, okay. Always something, like not always something, but this is good that happened. So basically what I did is I mistakenly put the console.log in the inner loop. Things happen. Okay, so in this case, we have a hollow rectangle with 8 columns and 4 rows. Great. Now, please, if you want to take a screenshot of this, I don't know if this is the first time I've ever used this particular program. I might put it up in the cloud, put a link to it, and maybe take a screenshot of this as well. I could put a link to this file as well if you I'll probably just do that to help you guys out if you need it. So thank you very much. I hope this was helpful. Again, this is one of the first exercises that I did in programming, and didn't really understand the significance or the importance of it back then, but I definitely do now. So I hope it helps, like I said, and have a good day. Bye.